Hello, my name is Matthias, and I'm the founder and CEO of a Germany-based educational non-profit organization called Emotion Coaching. And under this name and umbrella, I'm actually running a couple of educational projects. And a lot of the materials that we are using for the over 11,000 doctors who ran through my academy is in the form of mind maps. And to be specific, in the form of mind maps hosted by Mindomo.com. And I'm very excited about Mindomo as a mind map platform because it allows a content creator like myself and my team some yet ingenious feats. And I would like to share them with you. As soon as you start creating many or dozens, or as in our case, hundreds of mind maps, your needs change. I started implementing my contents on a different platform, and then I ran into trouble. And then I realized what the restrictions on the other platform, which I'm not going to name, what the restrictions were. And then I had to do my research again, and then I found Mindomo, and then I knew what I had to look for. I would like to show you and explain to you why I think educators should use mind maps more, and the unique features that mind maps give you, apart from those that you also find in a text processor. Definitive reasons why mind maps, and especially a platform that's built like Mindomo, can really take your educational contents to the next level. And those I'm going to explain to you now. Depending on what you are trying to create, you might wish to join the visual images, text with audio and bring that very close together. And on the other hand, sometimes creating a video is just not really what you want to do. I do produce a lot of screen recorded videos, but there are cases where it is just not efficient. I want something that is extremely flexible, but still integrates the audio very well. And of course, you can always host the audio somewhere and create a link there. But if you have done some research into that and have looked into the available options, you will usually get to the point that it is frustrating because the person has to click on the link and leave the place where they are in order to listen to the audio. If it's just a very short clip that only makes sense in the context of a document, you lose the context. Then it can get confusing for people on their mobile phones, for example, and they have to close a window and go back to your material in order to keep on watching what you were doing. What you want, usually, is to have a document that looks beautifully, that contains the visual information, the text or the structure that you want to show, and then just have a play button and the audio just playing where you want to place it. And this is something that Mindomo does. So this is the first example of a feature which it doesn't really require to be a mind map tool to already be amazingly interesting for content creators. That it is a mind map tool is something that you can even take as a side effect. So if you want to get visuals and audio together in one document, Mindomo is one way to do it. It was the only way for me to do it when I was researching the options. And that has proven to become a very highly flexible way of presenting contents. If you are a language teacher of any kind, then that could really change your game. Another reality of content creators usually is that we are publishing incomplete work, to be honest. So you have a version where you say, okay, that's kind of ready. It's good enough to be presented to the audience. So you publish that. But then you want to have the flexibility to quickly make changes. That is really the way to do it, and not as tedious as having videos that you would then have to change. Another aspect is that some of us, we don't even start working on a project. You might know this feeling exactly, that you don't start something to put it out because you would have to make a video, a screen recording of some sort, and that would be just too tedious. So for work in progress projects and products, it's fantastic and has worked very well in our case. Another thing you definitely need when you create a lot of content is styles. And styles are not templates. When you work on an advanced level with any text processor, then you know that the real work only begins when you actually use styles for your text. So if you want to change a headline, the headline has to change in the whole document. You wouldn't go to each headline and change the font size if you have to. And having something like that for mind maps is absolutely crucial and essential. That was actually the reason why I left the other platform where I started 2.5 years ago to implement some of our contents. It wasn't able to change the overall design of existing documents, mind maps in that case, when I wanted to. I want to make some style changes, and that has to propagate to your whole material. You cannot go to 500 documents and make the changes manually, or that would just be a loss of time. So Mindomo has that built in, and I feel that that is a feature which is so great to have. Mindomo is a mind map tool at heart and does that very well. It is amazing, it is quick, it is straightforward, and the feedback from our learners has been amazing so far regarding the structuring of knowledge. Another feature that is very little talked about is speed of implementation. Have you ever been sitting in front of a text and you wanted to move a paragraph? Well, you have to copy, paste it, move it down, make space and put it, and it's tedious. When you work on a text or parts of a text and you want to move the order or restructure and create a hierarchy of knowledge and want to be able to quickly reposition pieces of knowledge, then a mind map is fantastic. That's the way to do it. My whole team is always amazed when I develop an idea in a meeting, sharing my screen, having a mind map there. Because, we could just share some notes. When we're working on marketing, for example, you want to build a phrase together from different parts, and you need options, and sometimes you have to switch stuff around quickly. And there's nothing worse than when your tool is in the way of your creativity. You actually want to move forward, you want to build it quickly, and then okay, someone has to click, and you have to do it, and everyone waits, and it's kind of drag. So if you are a quick worker and you have a high speed in which you like to implement, a mind map is fantastic. And I can now only speak for Mindomo, honestly, because that's what I'm using. So that is amazing, the speed you can build structures of knowledge. And this advantage of putting things down quickly and then being able to dynamically change them around has been really a game changer. Now, as a mind map tool, Mindomo does not compete with full-blown project management software. And I wouldn't use it that way either. But there are features which allow excellent team communication about things. So, for example, with freelancers who are not working a large volume of highly complex tasks, but rather have a fairly simple structure of to-dos, and then there is a necessary back and forth and discussion of elements of their work. Mindomo is perfect because you do have the group feature. People can work simultaneously on the mind map. Stuff changes instantly, so you can communicate to-dos excellently. You can link to the resources people need beautifully and quickly, and use icons in order to prioritize. And you have to develop your own system. What we use a little is the built-in scheduling, tasking, and maybe the Gantt chart display that is built in. Mindomo has that, but I just haven't really used it much because that is not really the aspect of the tool that I find I need the most for the kind of project management I do on the mind maps. It's rather people having an overview, know what they have to do, that I can administer people, delegate better, and have the bird's eye view of what's happening in the project myself, and then delegate simple tasks. So if that is something you do, you can cover that with Mindomo. That taps into another thing that I experience with the whole Mindomo team is these guys listen. The guys and ladies, of course. They do listen. I remember in the very beginning, they must have perceived me as someone who was, maybe having a lot of requests and wishes. Because it's, when you start loving a product, then you start caring about it and you want it to become better. And they have implemented a lot of things that I was wishing for, not necessarily because I was wishing for them, but it seems that others did too. So the product is definitely developing in a great direction. Still has everything we need now, but is still, improving. And that is fantastic. Bugs are corrected very quickly if they ever happen. Overall, the platform is very generous to power users and content creators because you do not have a limit on the amount of mind maps. And I would personally not put a lot of large files on the platform. This is just not where to host your videos. And I'm sure they will have some fair use policy in place in order to prevent you to put now a terabyte of video up on the platform. This is not what it's built for. But our use case with a couple of thousand images from, radiology, medical images, we never hit any roadblock there. So they have a great hosting speed. Now, when you come across Mindomo.com, the first thing that when you are comparing platforms for mind maps might appear to you is that their corporate design seems a little outdated. At least in my opinion, it does. And that sadly disguises the brilliant tool that they have been building, which in my opinion is the best mind map tool out there. That's why I'm using it. So that's a shame. But, what does it help you to have a glossy interface only to then realize a little bit down the road, oh my God, here are this and that limitation, and I can do this, and these guys haven't thought about that because they're not used to dealing with high volume clients. They prefer a different client persona of those who have a dozen of mind maps and pay their monthly fee without asking many questions. Because I've experienced that. As soon as you get into details, with some support stuff, then there is just ignorance or people don't care. All the contrary with Mindomo. There as a corporate client, I felt always welcome and heard. And some wishes cannot be fulfilled instantly. This is just not realistic. I mean, I'm running a business myself and have people asking me and having wishes, and I know I can't fulfill them always instantly. But they're building it definitely with these kind of customers in mind without heavily advertising that. So that's why I decided to make that review from that perspective of a large volume content creator. A feature I would be also willing to pay for extra if they would offer to put our logo, the corporate logo on the top left on the mind maps, and we had to pay a fee for that. I'll do that, any day. Another thing that I would wish, but more for Mindomo than actually myself, is more beautifully designed templates to show off how nice the mind maps can actually look. The stock templates that you find seem a little dated when it comes to the design, not really that modern. And I can tell you, it comes from a place of, that team is really developing a solid product there when it comes to the software and is simply not putting that much of their budget into marketing and a glossy surface. And this is something I experienced with other players in that field, that everything looked so smooth and nice and polished. But as soon as I was diving deeper, the limitations of the infrastructure were just, it just couldn't work for my use case. So do not be discouraged by that first impression that you get. Implement carefully a style that you like. Take the time. All the features for all the styling that you will ever need are basically there. You'll apply your visuals, your corporate colors, obviously, or get someone to do it once for you, so that you have something that looks beautiful and has the functionality. Really, once you jump over that hurdle and you build a map that looks beautifully, you will really start to enjoy the other functions. Whereas at competitors, I was feeling like, okay, I get something beautiful like right out of the box, but as soon as I want to grow, I hit roadblocks and issues, like I already said. So in summary, Mindomo is really a product I sincerely love working with for so many things. And if only one of these examples really applies to your use case, then you got to try it out and see for yourself. And I hope I could help you a bit in the decision-making process, maybe inspire you, if you are a content creator, to find new ways to present your contents in a multimedia platform that really has some amazing feature and is an amazing bundle that in this form I do not know an alternative. So get creative and enjoy.